Well, good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Pillow Talk. We're excited about Pillow Talk tonight. Come on in. It's going to be amazing. We are excited to share with you. We're building healthy marriages. Yes, tools to equip you and empower you to have a successful marriage, the godly way, have a godly marriage. Whether your marriage needs to be restored, you're just starting out, you're looking to be married, whatever the situation is, you're at the right place. Please invite someone that you know that may be married or looking to be married. Even if you've been married before and you're unmarried at this present time, this Pillow Talk session is for you. So again, we're excited to have you with us. Thank you for your continued support. As many times we've received prayer requests for marriages, this is what has prompted us to do Pillow Talk, and thank you so much for being a part of that. It's going to be an amazing session on tonight, so please get yourselves together. Call a friend, call up somebody, get your husband, get your wife, and let's do Pillow Talk together. So blessings to you guys. We are excited. Unique, God bless you. Thank you so much for being a part of it. She's young, but she is wanting to learn, wanting to grow, because we don't want people to make some of the mistakes that we've made or the mistakes that we've seen other people make. So we've got to train them up early. And we have one viewer that their son likes, and he's, I think, around 9 years old. And so again, we've got to train our children up so that they have a successful marriage and understand what successful relationships really look like. So thank you again for joining in with us. I see the hearts coming, I see the smiley faces, so keep those coming. Yes, we're all in agreement. If you're on Periscope, thank you so much for tuning in with us. We love the hearts. It shows unity as us coming together to see the perfect will of God manifest in our lives.
That's it.
Yes.
Just waiting on a few more people to come on. I'm excited. It's been a long, wonderful day. We apologize for being a little bit behind. We were in a meeting that we could not end as quickly as we didn't even necessarily want to end it quickly, because we were having a really great conversation, kind of doing some mentorship. And so at any rate, I am excited. I want to talk tonight about lessons we've learned in marriage and stuff we've learned while we've been pastoring that I think could be beneficial to you. Things we've learned in that whole process. And so couple of first ones that I'm going to talk about are things that we've learned that have made a difference for us and that we try to recommend to other people, because sometimes you see some stuff and you're like, man, this could have been avoided if this. Right. Or people, you see them married and you see them in the relationship, and we're getting a lot of inboxes like, okay, they're identifying that they're married to a person that's potentially a narcissist, or they're married to a person who they can tell really has certain issues. Right. And they're like, if I had known this before I got married, I would have never gotten married.
Right.
And so then now the question becomes, what do I do now that I'm married to him? How do I deal with it? We're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to talk about, again, some things I think you should do before, during, and if there is an after marriage that you got to do as far as that's concerned too. And then, because one of the things that we'll get right into it. One of the things that I say is that you got to seek and maintain godly counsel, because you got to be very careful the people that you're listening to prior to getting into marriage and while you're in marriage. If the people you're dealing with have toxic backgrounds, their life is kind of off kilter, then what's going to happen is they're going to feed that into you, and then what you get fed is going to be it's going to be chaotic. Right. And so I've always said, make sure that you get godly counsel, that whoever's counseling you, whoever's talking to you is a godly person, because if not, you're going to end up being in trouble. You follow me? For instance, I'm starting to see people that sometimes, they're getting married, but, let me give you a for instance. I'm trying to be careful how I say the stuff that I say. I've never seen anybody who said that I was their leader who listened to me on most things. The one thing that usually people don't listen to their leader on is when it comes to relationships. Right. So you'd be like, you're my pastor. I want to hear from you. What do you have to say? Until it comes to something that they want in a relationship, in a romantic endeavor, now all of a sudden you wouldn't, it's just, so now all of a sudden you don't want to listen to it because you're in love.
Right.
Because
right. And sometimes love or lust blinds us.
Oh, yes.
It blinds the things that are right there in front of us that we really don't want to see. And many times as a leader, we can see beyond what you can see, because most time you're only able to see what you want to see.
And love blinds you.
Right.
Because you worry about how fine they are, how handsome they are. You're looking at how they, let me give you this one.
And many times we get so deep and say, this is my assignment.
Right.
God has brought her or him into my life. This is my assignment. And so, but we, so. And
then you got the situation where you're looking at the relationship from the financial benefit. So you're in a tight financial situation. They help you out. So you got all these different motives for why you get married or why you find this person. And then again, I have never ever had a problem out of somebody. I remember this one member saying to me, "Listen, you're my pastor. I love you. I'm going to listen to what you say. If you say something, then I won't hear what you got to say, and I'm going to abide by it." And the reality is, it doesn't always happen like that. There's sometimes when everything else but the romantic side of things and the relationship side of things, people listen to. So I say seek and maintain godly counsel. Because there are some things, if you get godly counsel about, then what will happen is you won't have to make the mistakes. If you don't get the godly counsel, it's going to be your finances, it's going to be your time, it's going to be your blood, your sweat, and your tears that you're going to have to deal with. That's going to literally take you back. Let me tell you something. Marrying the wrong person can literally, financially, almost destroy you. You get married, you start becoming intimate, then you begin to have children, and then now that you got the children, sometimes you stay in the marriage for the children. And so you stayed in the marriage for the children, but you don't like the person. And so, or you marry somebody for their looks and for other stuff, and y'all not even close. Y'all not even really friends. You ain't even have a friendship. So stuff like this, man, can be dangerous. And again, a leader can see something, or even, it doesn't even have to be your pastor, but just get somebody that you know is really spiritually, really rooted and grounded, and not somebody just going to be a yes man or yes woman concerning your situation. Right. You might even get a Christian counselor or somebody that can sit down and really tell you, no, that person is still dealing with some stuff. That person, if you get with them within a certain amount of time, you're going to want, because there's experience. I can see, as I said, sometimes somebody said, well, I want you to meet my boyfriend. I want you to meet the girl that I like, this young lady. And so with guys, I said, come on, let's go to the mall. Let's go to the beach. So we go to the mall, we go to the beach. I'm looking as he's watching other people. Well, I automatically know that's a red flag. You're not delivered in your flesh yet. That doesn't mean you got to be that you got to be just dead. That doesn't mean you're 150 years old yet. No, but you at least need to have some temperance and some discipline that doesn't allow you to lust after everybody that you see. If the person that you're looking at, if they want to test the boundaries of physical intimacy before marriage, these are warning signs. It doesn't mean that people are bad people. It just means that sometimes we need to wait on them to get delivered from some stuff and get some stuff out of them before we connect with them.
Absolutely. And I think what happens sometimes, even in the church arena, we feel as though someone could really have a relationship with God. And one of the things that we found out is just because someone is a Christian, just because someone has a gift, or they may even have a position or title, it does not mean that that's the person for you. That does not qualify them. That is not the end all and be all. Just because they have a relationship with God, it doesn't mean they're supposed to be with you or you're supposed to be with them. And I know of a situation of someone, and I was really, really proud of her, that this person, they had, kind of known each other, indirectly. They would, say hello to each other, whatever, on maybe social media. And then the relationship kind of turned a little serious. And so they, even said to me, what do you, this person is kind of pursuing this, that, and the other, but I'm not really sure, they're saying they're, say they're a man of God, and, they're in ministry and so on and so forth. And so they, showed me a picture of him and so on and so forth. I said, well, we're going to pray. And probably about a month or so later, they were doing something, and another, friend of theirs, they were seeking godly counsel. And the person, that they were talking to, and they said, just kind of want to get your idea about this person, so on and so forth, showed them the picture, and they were just like, I don't think so. I don't think that would be, a wise decision for you to make at this point. And amazingly enough, that person really began to show them who they really were. They had some underlying hidden agendas that they were dealing with, some spirit of perversion and so forth. So they were like, no, I'm running away from that. I shut that down quick, because if not, we can easily get caught up because of what we see or what the person portrays to be. But sooner or later, they're going to show themselves, and you've got to be able to have people that are on the outside that can see what you can't see.
One of the things, I was typing in something that I wanted to cover because somebody asked the question. But one of the things I tell people that if they don't seek me beforehand, please don't make me responsible for the problems that you have after getting married. Did you hear what I said?
You said it
if
twice.
you do not seek me as counsel, and I'm supposed to be your leader, then when stuff blows up and it goes crazy, don't come calling me, blowing my phone up, inboxing me, texting me, and everything else saying, can you please help? Because you didn't make me a part of the process.
Right.
And so it's unfair for you to not include your leader in what you have going on as far as a relationship is concerned, and then or even just other things in general. Mm-hmm. And then when everything breaks loose in the situation because you weren't prepared, because you didn't look at things. And let me say this: I've never told anybody don't get married. What I have said is they may not be ready now.
Right.
And if you are going to marry them, they need to work on this area, this area, this area, and this area potentially, because this is the stuff that you're going to find that's going to be a problem later.
Yes.
If you don't deal with this stuff, it's ultimately going to cause you a whole lot of problems.
Absolutely.
And so what happens is you get married and nobody asks you real questions. The stuff you like, the stuff you don't like, the stuff you've been doing, the stuff you don't need to do, the stuff you should do. And then if you get married to somebody and then you end the marriage and they don't want to change. Mm-hmm. So it's been 10 years and they haven't changed. It's been 20 years and you haven't changed. And I was given a scenario the other day where I have a friend, I have a friend that is in a marriage and they really don't want to be in the marriage. And they're getting to the age where they say, can I live the rest of my life in this marriage that I'm miserable in? Or do I need to get out of this marriage and pray that God will send me a spouse or a mate that's really comparable with me, that I'm really going to be happy with, because I got fewer days left than I have to go.
Right.
And so what do you tell somebody like that in a situation? Mm-hmm. Do you tell them, well, you just go ahead and get a divorce and do whatever? Or do you tell? And so I'm going to talk about that at the end as well. If it's a situation where there's abuse or neglect or adultery or fornication or whatever that's involved in it,
right.
Well, that's one set of solutions. But then what do you do if you're in a marriage and you literally just married the wrong person and you didn't realize who they were until after you married them, and there's no cause biblically for divorce, but you're miserable in the marriage and you've been miserable for years and you're literally dying and drying up in the marriage, then what do? Right. And we're going to answer those questions. I want to give you answers to stuff like that, because and the person asked me, he said, well, I said, now I can give you this answer as a pastor and I can give you this answer as a friend. Mm-hmm. I said, I can give you the answer as a brother. He said, well, give me the friend. And I said, well, my answer is going to be the same either way. Do you have the rest of your life to wait on this person? And in this situation, it was a little bit different. But I said, do you have the rest of your life to wait on this scenario for this person to decide to do what they've been saying they were going to do all these years and have not done it? And so you got to look at that.
Opposite, right?
Yeah, they've done the total opposite. So you got to ask yourself if they're willing to work at it. And that's another thing that I say. I say, is the person willing to go to counseling? When they go to counseling, do they know more than the counselor? Are they argumentative and find fault with the counselor? Are they even subject to anybody? Are they accountable to anybody? Let me tell you something. I was talking to a couple not too long ago, and the spouse called and said, hey, and I want to be married. And I'm looking and I'm like, he said, well, we want to get married. I'm like, oh, I don't feel like you should be married. I didn't feel like it. Mm-hmm. I didn't tell them that I didn't feel like they should be married. And so here it is later on, they're married, but they probably shouldn't have been married. Now they're married, now you got issues. Well, the reality is you married the wrong person. Now what do you do now that you realize you've married the wrong person?
Right.
You realize this thing is going nowhere. You're miserable. You're not on one accord.
Right.
You know, it's just a mess. And
Right.
you're sitting up trying to figure out, like, how do I deal with this? And this is the stuff we really have to deal with, because the reality is that I find many people in this situation. That's why divorce courts are where they are, is because people realize, I don't really like you and you're not changing. Mm-hmm. And you're argumentative. And it's always some drama with you.
Right.
And it starts off nice. You know, we could go to McDonald's together. We could go eat ice cream together. We could go see a movie together. Everything worked well. But the reality is, you're a much different person than the person I was eating ice cream with.
Right.
Okay, have a seat, sir. Please have a seat. Have a seat,
Get
mister.
Out. Get out.
Your mom's going to make you get out if you don't have a seat. So he wants to get in the bed because he wants to talk to y'all too. Okay.
Right, because when love turns to hate.
Right.
And then what happens is sometimes, you know, in that scenario is you become enemies to each other. So you're actually living with your enemy.
That's it.
And so everything that you do and everything that concerns you are in total opposition of each other. And so you have become an enemy. Where you were friends, you become an enemy. And two enemies, is very difficult to live in the same place.
Oh, yeah.
It's very, very difficult, because there is a stress that takes place that, you know, you hate to come home.
And it becomes unhealthy.
It becomes very unhealthy.
Now you're a prisoner in your home. Even no matter which one of the people in the relationship you are a prisoner in your own home.
Yes.
You in the house, you don't want to be in the house. You don't like being around each other. And so then, and this is where all the other stuff, the stuff gets opened up to. It can literally get crazy.
Right.
Because you're going to go to the path of least resistance. You're going to find comfort. You're going to find joy. You're going to find this stuff. And it's what people do.
Yes.
And the truth of the matter is, everybody doesn't find it in God. And we're going to talk about in a few minutes how that's what we should seek and what we should find. And if we can do a few things, I'm going to give you a few keys at the end about this process. The other thing I say is, no matter how knowledgeable you are about relationships, there are still areas that you can get wisdom from other people.
Right.
Because, you know, like you said, there's nothing like a miserable marriage. And then somebody else made a statement that it's hard enough to be in a marriage with the right person. It's hard enough.
Right.
Because you're getting to know somebody you've never gotten to know.
Absolutely. And you're gonna have situations. You're not gonna always agree on things. Many times may have different personalities, different viewpoints. And even if you know that God sent this person to you, this is a God ordained marriage, you're still gonna have challenges. You're gonna still have to overcome some things. There's gonna be some opposition that comes against you. There are gonna be some financial issues. There are gonna be some emotional issues that come up. It's life. It's normal. But what happens, though, you're able to come together to resolve those things. At first, you may not know how to really resolve it the right way. But as you continue to grow, because you're committed to the marriage, you're committed to that person, you're committed to God, and you say, you know what, for good or for bad, in sickness and in health, I'm here with you. We're going to fight through this, you know. And sometimes what happens, the enemy wants us to fight each other, but we've got to be able to come together to fight the real enemy. Yeah.
But and at the end, I'm also going to talk about what happens if you lost your patience with your spouse. What happens if you've fallen out of love with your spouse? What do you do then? I'm going to answer those questions. Then I'm talking about destroying the flesh daily. Destroying your flesh is a continual process. The Apostle Paul said this. He said, he talked about the works of the flesh in Galatians 5. He goes down through a list of 19 different works of the flesh. Then he makes this statement in another text. He said, I beat myself daily. He said, lest after I preach to others, I myself will become a reprobate. And so what he's saying is that there is a process where you have to continually deal with yourself. Because what I'm finding is that in most situations where people have problems in their marriage, it's because somebody's flesh is not dead.
Jesus.
And so if your flesh isn't dead and their flesh is not dead, and you got a lot, because the Bible says, I remember the scripture said that I'm crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ live in me. And the life that I now live in the flesh, I live according to the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. Mm-hmm. So if I'm crucified with Christ, that means I'm dead. And so if my flesh, though, is still alive, and my will and my emotions, and you still popping off all the time, you always got something to say, it's always your side of things, somebody's not dead. And that's the worst thing in the world to do is to, and I know that's going to sound crazy, is to marry a live person. To marry a person that's not dead. You know, if your mate is not dead and they're not through dealing with their flesh and who they are, man, it's going to be a rough situation for you.
Right. And being able to, again, you know, there is a thing called patience. There is a thing called long suffering, and certainly there is temperance. That we have to be able to walk in those areas, you know, and exhibit that fruit. And let me tell you, if you're not patient, marriage is going to allow you to become patient. It's going to cause your fruit to ripen. It's going to cause your fruit to grow, because there is something that God, one of the things that we have to look at in marriage is not always about the other person. Sometimes God is using that to perfect you, to mature your love walk, to mature your mercy, your grace card, your mercy, all of those different things that God is using the situation to make you better so that you can love unconditionally. What if they mess up? What if they do something, whatever? What if they go out and, have an affair or whatever? Can you love them past that? Can you really begin to forgive? Can you really truly walk in forgiveness? Marriage teaches you all of those things. It really allows you the opportunity through the opposition. There is always an opportunity for God to manifest himself in your life if you allow him to. And so it's not an issue of will you have problems? Yes, you will have problems in a marriage, but the testimony comes when you can endure the testing that's going to come in your marriage and come out stronger.
Yeah, I talked to this one couple, and I haven't done a actual survey. I might do it one day, but I was looking at people that have been married over 50 years. Mm-hmm. And I talked to this gentleman. He said, we've been married over 50 years. He said, I've not seen anybody that's been married over 50 years that never had any problems. Mm-hmm. He said, we've had problems. We just made up our mind that we were going to stick with it and keep fighting through it. Right. And as my grandmother would say, I tell you, she has these country sayings, but she would say tongue and teeth fall out, but they don't go anywhere. Mm-hmm. And so, you got to learn how to be able to endure challenges, storms, and like with anything else. Let's see if we can help them get off of the scope. So look at Paul, then you look at Samson, what his flesh craved, it got him in trouble. Solomon, what his flesh craved, got him in trouble. David, and what his flesh craved, got him in trouble. So that's why you got to go back to Paul. You got to destroy the flesh daily. You got to every day get up every morning. And this is not just if you're married, this is just period. You're not going to maintain a job for a long time. You're not going to be a member of a church. You're not going to do anything in life if you don't die daily, because somebody's always going to do something that's going to bother your flesh. Right. And so you've got to learn how to die. And as you said, God may be allowing your spouse to be the one who adds the resistance to you. The way that you build muscle is by resistance. You don't build muscle by just letting your muscle. As a matter of fact, if you don't have resistance and if you don't have a heavy weight on your muscle, you will never grow. Right. And so in order to grow it, you gotta challenge your muscle. And that's the way you see whether or not it actually grows or not, is by seeing it go through adversity, seeing it go through challenge. Your marriage muscle. Most people get married with the idea that everything is going to be perfect. Right. Most people get the idea that it's going to be a fairy tale relationship, it's going to be a fairy tale everything. It just doesn't happen like that. Yes. And you got to make up in your mind whether or not you really, really, really want to deal with it, really, really, really want to go through it. Yes. And the reality is, I think we all get to tough places in our life. Life is just not going to be perfect. But you got to make a decision. Let me give you this other point. I said, because people are not there. Regular times in the presence of God together. Prayer, worship, fasting, reading, studying. And I was talking about this the other day because one of my pastors, former pastors, used to say this. He used to say, you can't expect out of And then once I became a pastor, I went back and talked to him one day, and I was talking to him about a particular area, and he said, you can't expect people to perform in an area you've not taught them about. So how do you expect your spouse, if you're the husband, if you've not set an atmosphere in your home of regular Bible study and reading, if you're having a problem in a certain area, let's get in the Word in that area and let the Word be the final arbitrator, the final arbitrator of whatever the situation is.
Right.
So how do you get in the Word? If your spouse is not doing a certain thing, how do you get in the Word together? Again, you can't make them do anything,
right.
But you want to have an environment that says that Scripture is going to be the final arbitrator for who we are and for what we do. I think that's very important if you ask me.
Right.
And
even asking God to give you the grace to how to even minister to your spouse. How to minister to your spouse, how to even bring that to them, because sometimes they may become resistant. Sometimes their faith level is not where yours is. Sometimes their prayer level is not where yours is. And so we can't go to them in a way that condemns them, but how do we go to them in a way that can build them up, that allows them to come alongside of you no matter where they are in their walk, in their prayer life, and all of those different things. How do you give them the opportunity to come alongside you so that they see it as a team and not as you just over them and telling them what to do? Because most times people just don't want to be told what to do.
They don't want to be lorded over.
Right, absolutely. Especially when it is the wife, trying to get the husband to do something. You're like, oh, you got to do it like this. You got to, you don't sound right. That's not how my pastor does it. That's not how he showed us. No, then you find out and ask God specifically, because each person is different. Each household is different. What it took for somebody else may be different than what it's going to take for your household. So you got to get in a place, even with God, to be able to seek God. Even if they don't want to do it initially, continue to pray. Continue, don't make them feel guilty. Oh, you don't pray with me. You don't do this. You don't do that. No, you begin to pray and allow God to deal with their heart.
Yeah. Because sometimes we can run people more farther away from God than we do towards Him. And that's sometimes what people do. But again, if you can develop an environment where you pray together, where you spend time reading together, where you spend time in His presence together. I talked about this in our church on Sunday, and I talked about how it's difficult to get into the presence of God. And I posed the question to our congregation. I said, how many of you have been in the presence of God this week? And then I said, if you were in the presence of God, lift your hand if you came out of the presence and you were the same as when you went in. And so sometimes we think we've been in the presence of God, but I've never read where somebody was in the presence of God and something didn't change about them.
Right.
And so you want to, you want to be that person that when you and your spouse get together, and that's why you want to worship together. That's why you want to try to be in the same church. You want to be in the same church environment. Somebody say, can I go to one church and they go to another one? Or can I not go to church and they go to church? Yeah, I mean, if that's where you at now and you're already there, you're where you are now, you need to just pray that God would convict them and bring them to the place that they need to be so that they could be one with you. Right. But the reality is, it's tough if you're not worshiping together, praying. There's been times in marriage that one of us or the other didn't see eye to eye. But there is something that happens when you get into the presence of God where you repent for not having treated each other right.
Yes.
And so you can do more. You can do more with your spouse in 5 minutes in the presence of God than you could in there fussing at them, complaining, withholding attention, conversation, affection, fussing at them about what they're not doing. You can do more in the presence of God as He convicts their heart and then causes them to say, what can I do to make this marriage better? What can I do to make this relationship better? It makes a difference.
Yes.
So find a way to get your spouse into the presence of God with you, whether that's in your home or whether that's in wherever. Find a way to get your spouse into the presence of God with you.
Yes.
Then I was looking at the scripture where it says, washing them with the water of the word. So again, how do you do even devotionals at home? How do you do devotionals with your spouse?
Right.
How do y'all get some kind of devotional that you can read? And again, as I went back to what I said, if you're having a problem in a certain area, say, let's study this. Let's study what the word says about it. So y'all can come together and let the Holy Spirit then begin to minister to you as you're in the presence of God together.
Right.
How often if people say, well, we're not getting along, we're having problems. Well, are you praying together? Are you worshiping together? Are you Are you meditating on the word together? Are you spending time together, just quiet time before the Lord together? Do you do that? And 9 times out of 10, most people said, nope, we don't do that. And that's why you're having problems.
Right.
Because one of the things I found is that the closer you get to God, the closer you will then be drawn back to your spouse.
Yes. Yes.
So some relationship issues are issues that are really, issues of you not getting along with God, or you being far away from God, because again, there could be times when your spouse completely loses it and completely goes the other way. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about a situation where your spouse is ungodly. Well, you knew your spouse was ungodly before you got married.
Right.
Or you got closer to God. And this happens a lot with female Christians, because sometimes they married a man and then they come to find out the man was not as deeply spiritual as they were. And then she keeps going closer to God and he just stays where he's at. That can be a challenging situation,
Yes.
So I think it's very important that you try with everything you have to make sure that your spouse is in that place of worship with you, and that you're finding a way even at home to begin to worship.
Yeah. And there are times when the spouse, they're not as spiritual, or they don't go to church, or they say, I don't want to go to church, or, whatever, I don't want to participate in that particular activity. And so many times we'll say, well, I'm just going to go to church. If I have to go to church by myself, that's what I'll do, but I'm not going to do anything with you. And so what happens, we've got to begin to look at things a little bit differently, because we're trying to win that spouse over. We're trying to show him the love of God. If your spouse says to you, mostly it would happen, I guess, as, coming from the husband. If your husband says to you, I don't want you to go to church Sunday, I just want you to stay at home, or I want you to do something with me, then you... What?
I was waving.
Oh.
Somebody was saying hello, I was waving.
Oh. Then you have to make a decision, because you love you. It's not an issue if you don't love God, and if you miss a Sunday, you're God is not going to curse you, or hit you over the head. No, you've got to be able to come into a place that you're able to sometimes compromise with your spouse in order to win them over.
Yeah. Now, the interesting thing about that too is that now that was almost sacrilegious for some folks, for you to tell somebody that they could actually miss a Sunday to be with their spouse or to keep their family together. Now, I'm not saying you miss, like, it's only 52 weeks in a year and you miss like 50 of them weeks because your spouse don't want you to come to church. That's different.
Right.
But I'm saying every now and then you got to find a way to spend some family time. Get some family time together. And if your spouse, see, that's a touchy situation too, because if you have a spouse that's not in God, and then they want you to stay at home, and then you stay at home, and then you start drying up, eventually you're going to have to make a decision in whether or not, one, you're going to stay in the marriage, two, because you can't just dry up and die.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. But I mean, as a one, and every so often time, you may have to make that sacrifice in order to win them.
Yeah, I agree.
In order to win them. But if it comes to a time wherein they're trying to stop your relationship with God, that's different. If they're trying to stop your relationship with God and they're like, I don't want you praying in this house, I don't want to hear anything about God in this house, and so forth, then that definitely is something of great concern.
And then, somebody said, don't be unequally yoked, but you could actually have gotten married. Again, going back to what we talked about at first, if you did not consult with godly counsel, then you get married, and all of a sudden now you are married and you unequally yoked, but the person is not abusive and the person has not had infidelity, then you don't have a legal grounds to not be with the person in marriage. Mm-hmm. So this is where you gotta, as you say, you gotta win them to Christ.
You gotta win them.
And you gotta win them. You gotta be wise. You gotta be loving. You gotta pour hot coals upon their head and heap it upon their head, and not literally, because some I don't want anybody to think literal. Pastor said put some hot grits on them people and they'll act right. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you love them into Christ. If you let them see by your character that you love God and how you love God, mm-hmm. and how passionate yours is. And I tell this to men all the time. I say that as a man, we should be so in love with God that it draws our spouse into our field of movement and causes them to be drawn into it. And I think the same thing can happen with the wife.
Sure.
I think you can be so in love with God and so passionate about God. And this is also sometimes what we see. We see a lot of stuff sometimes where the wife you ain't really living saved. Mm-hmm. And so what they see doesn't compel them to want, or the husband is not really living saved. Or you so religious and dogmatic, and so everything out of your mouth is a scripture. And not to say that that's not the case, but sometimes in the church we can become so heavenly minded we're no earthly good. Mm-hmm. And so you're so deep and you're so, you so anointed, but your marriage is falling apart. Right. But you deep and you anointed, but your marriage is falling apart. Right. Your children don't like God. Your family don't like God. Everybody around you can see that you deep and you know every scripture in the Bible, but your life is not benefiting anything from the word. You're not being transformed. Right. And I can see you're still mean, you're still nasty, you still cuss, you're still angry, you're still doing all the stuff that everybody else in the world is doing. So why would your spouse change? Mm-hmm. And so this is why I say we really have to get into the presence of God and let God really change us and cause our spirit to be different. And then as the anointing gets on you for love and from compassion and for patience and all those things, what'll happen is it'll draw them into circumference. Because I'm telling you, I see it all the time. I see where a husband has gotten I see it more with husbands and I see it with wives. The husband or the wife has gotten fed up. They're fed up, they're done, they're over. Now all of a sudden you want to go talk to the pastor. Mm-hmm. Now all of a sudden you want to give them 500 scriptures for why they should not leave the marriage. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, if you had been living this godly lifestyle that you're talking about and walking this thing out, that problem would have never happened. Mm-hmm. It would have never happened. And so, very important that we look at those things, we think about it, we walk through that process.
Right, because marriage certainly is a ministry. It is a ministry to each other. It is a ministry inside your home as well as outside of your home. You know, husbands loving their wife as Christ loved the church. But as we look at that, as we look at the sacrifice of Christ, as we look at that he came and he gave everything he suffered, everything that he went through was literally for someone else. He was willing to die for us. He was willing to suffer for us. He was willing to be beaten for us. And so all of these different things, when you really, really look at that, when you understand the fullness of what that represents, and so marriage as it represents Christ's relationship with the church, knowing that things are not going to, and you know, Christ was rejected. You know, he was rejected, but he loved anyway. Even he had compassion on those that would one day say, crucify him. I'm sure some of the same people that, you know, he had fed, some people that perhaps he had healed, and so forth. And they still turned against him. And so even in a marriage, every single day is not going to be perfect. It's not going to be the fairy tale wedding that we see sometimes. And see, what happens is they'll show you the highlights, but they don't show you the after. They don't show you the 2 years or the 1 year after or the 20 years after. They don't show you all of that. They show you 28 minutes of something that they put together to make good for television. And so we feel as though that's how our life should be, but that's not how life is.
Yeah, because you're going to have challenges. You know, and the reality is, you know, I talk about that too, even with our church. Because there's times, you know, you go through things. You're going to go through stuff. And I think one of the injustices I had that I saw when I was coming up, I went to a small Baptist church, and you just never really saw the pastor. You didn't see the pastor interact with his wife. You didn't see them talking. Mm-hmm. You didn't see them spending time together. You didn't see any of that. Only thing you saw him come to do, he came in, he came out of his office, he went up and he preached a message. He pulled on his ear, he shook his leg, and then he went back out of the office and he left. And you didn't see him again for another, you know, however long before the next service. And so you didn't really get to see healthy interaction, especially if you came up in a broken home. You didn't get to see healthy interaction. You didn't really get to see any of that. And so, you know, again, that was a church I came up in. Everybody's church is not like that. But I think there's somewhere in there we have to be able to model and also be able to disciple people into what healthy looks like, healthy relationship, healthy ministry, healthy just families, healthy businesses, healthy whatever you need. You want to be able to see it healthy. And so the next thing I say is you got to also prefer each other continually. You always have to place each other's needs above your own consistently. And so that goes back to dying. If you're both dead, then what happens is that if you're both dead, then what you can do is you can make sure that just push it right there. There you go. Okay, so if you're both dead, then you don't have to necessarily worry about whether or not your spouse is going to prefer you above. It goes back to what we talked about in, you're sitting at the dinner table. This is good for newlywed couples. What we learned how to do was we always share a plate. Unless we're at a buffet, we always share a plate. Why? Because that way we have to learn how to share. We have to learn how to be on one accord with stuff. So whatever we order, we eat, we share. We have enough for both. Somebody said, well, I eat too much, and I'm not sharing, and I'm not nitpicking. Yeah, in some areas you're still not dead. I mean, the reality is you're still not dead, because somewhere in there you ought to be able to share something. You ought to be able to work together with something. Right. You can't be selfish. If you're selfish, it's never going to work. So how do you prefer your spouse? Again, we go back to our first couple of times we did a pillow talk. If it's the last French fry, brothers, give her the last French fry. At least give her the option of whether she wants the last French fry. If it's the last sip of the drink, let her have the option of whether or not you want her to have the last, whether she wants it or not. Right. Let her have the option of saying, I don't want it, I'm fine, it's cool. But the reality is, if you don't ever give them a chance, never make your spouse feel as if though it's hard, but we share French fries. That's right. You got to do it, Michelle J. Miller. But, you got to do it. You got to share the French fries, man. Listen, but I also looked at the fact that you got to figure out how to make your spouse's needs just as important as yours. And so, again, if you're not dead, your spouse's needs are always going to be last. Yes. It's always going to be an inconvenience to prefer your spouse. So now, if everything you do with your spouse is an inconvenience, the question is, how much do you really love them? How patient are you really with them? Not only just how patient are you with them, how are you really still in love with them? Because after the honeymoon phase, you really see what a relationship really is. That's why I said marriage maintenance is a continual process. You never get out of the marriage maintenance phase of maintaining your marriage. You never get out of it. Let me find this other note that I wrote down. Learn how to forgive quickly. Learn how to forgive. Do you hear what I said? Learn how to forgive quickly. Do not allow hurt, disappointment, and to fester and linger unaddressed. Go back to your spouse. Share with them how what they did made you feel. Not attack them about what happened. Go back to them and say, this is how what you did made me feel. Right. Yeah. Somebody talking about some cornbread. Let us pray, Lord.
Can I have your cornbread? Yes,
you can have my cornbread. She can have my cornbread. And I like cornbread, but you can have my cornbread.
Exactly. It's amazing because we almost always prefer each other over ourselves. I prefer to buy something for him over buying something for myself. He prefers buying something for me even over himself. We'll go out somewhere and, we may be at the mall or whatever, and I want to, and I see somebody, I want to get this for you. And he's like, no, I want to get this for you. And so being able to really understand, even, it just happens. Why? Because we really love each other. We want the other one.
Oh, go ahead. Just remember to read this that they say right here. Somebody said you maintenance your car, not your marriage. So I thought that was very.
Why not your marriage? Yeah, absolutely. That there has to be a maintenance program, a tune-up. Sometimes you have to change some things. Sometimes do something different. We were leaving a meeting earlier today, and we were gonna stop just to get a little appetizer. My husband said, "You want to stop there?" And then we both were tired, and I'm like, "Sure, why not? Let's do it. Let's just do it." So we stopped and had a little appetizer. Came home, took a nap. We're refreshed, but just being able to do something together. My husband was working on some things last night. He called me. He said, you want a cheeseburger? I said, sure. You can, just bring it. He said, no, I want to come pick you up, and, we go get it, because then by the time I get home, it may be cold. So I want you to have it fresh. So I'm like, okay, sure. So it's just sometimes just being able to, do something that's spontaneous. Consider the other person. That's the whole thing. Consider the other person.
Somebody said that their spouse would share the share finances, but not the household chores. And sometimes, you have to be able to at least explain to the person that means something to you, and then share with them how it makes you feel potentially that they don't help with the stuff that you need them to help with. How does it make you feel that they don't help with the children? How does it make you feel when you don't help with the dog? Listen, if we do this together, then I'm going to be able to have more energy and more time and more excitement.
Right.
But if I have to do everything by myself, it's like one time I came home and I was fussing. And I said, well, baby, you didn't do, I need you to help me with this. She said, okay, I got up at midnight prayer. I got up at 5 o'clock prayer. I did all the products. I did this. You want me to clean? You want me to cook? You want me to do this? And I'm sitting there like, oh, wow. I didn't even think about the fact that you were doing all that stuff. And so sometimes it's not that the person means to be inconsiderate. It just means that maybe they've forgotten sincerely what all you do.
Right.
And, one I don't know if I can tell this one, but I'm going to tell it anyway. So one time, I was, of course, I'm saying something about this and that. And my wife said, okay, you want to push 1 for this, and push 2 for this, and push 3 for this? I got a button. If you push the button on me, I'll do what you need me to do. And so it was funny because she has these funny little quirky little things that she does like that sometimes will help me realize that sometimes we're and again, we may not realize what we're saying to our spouse, or that what we're saying or what they're not doing.
Right.
It's just like if I'm not helping with certain things, well, you may have to remind me, even though in your mind you're like, you should already know. You should already know that. But the reality is sometimes we don't know, and sometimes your spouse doesn't know. So how do you tell them what they don't know so that they can then? Because again, sometimes you're expecting your spouse to read your mind.
Yes.
So you read my mind, tell me what I'm thinking, do what I think you should be doing when I haven't communicated that to you. The average person doesn't even know their spouse's love language. So you're trying to get them to operate in something that you don't, that really, here it is, I want you to touch me more. I want you to communicate with me more. But did I do the stuff that was necessary for you to actually be able to do the stuff that I want you to do, or did I fuss and complain about it? So again, there's a way to get your spouse, I believe, to do mostly anything. I believe it. Yes. But you just got to know how to, you got to, my wife always has this joke. She said, I'll train him up in the way that he should go, so when he's old, he won't depart from it.
Absolutely. Ladies, train him up.
And so, Lord, help me, Jesus. But I think it's important that, again, we really, really look at that and look at how we can, how do you speak their language so that they'll learn how to speak your language? And how do you tell them, this is what I need more from you? This is what I need from you. What you've given me is great, because sometimes we like to give our spouse our language when they really may not speak our same language.
Absolutely.
So it's like the man from China speaking Chinese, and he's speaking Chinese to the man from America that doesn't know how to speak Chinese. So what does he need? He needs a translator. Either that, or one of them needs to learn how to speak the other one's language.
Absolutely.
And so sometimes we need a translator in marriage. We need somebody who can help translate how we speak, so that then we can be saying, at least I can say what you need me to say, and then you can say what I need you to say, and we can take turns, because just like that, we can't both speak at the same time.
Yes.
And so it's necessary for me to speak and then for you to speak, so that we can both take turns and we can both feel that our love language is valued.
Right.
Because the worst thing in the world to do is be in a relationship where you are not appreciated, not valued, not loved, and not even known. And that's any relationship.
Yes.
Nobody wants to be in any relationship, even if you're friends, where you don't feel like you are valued and appreciated. Very important. Yep. Will you say something?
Absolutely. I think that is so very key. Being very considerate of the other person. And many times we feel as though, because we're looking from our lenses, from our perspective, from our viewpoint, and then sometimes we don't consider what the other person may have going on. We don't consider some of the stressors that they may be dealing with. We don't consider those things. Why? Because we're only seeing it from our viewpoint. So being able to understand That's one of the things that, we've had to learn. It didn't just happen. We've had to learn. We've had to be patient with each other. We have had to endure some things with each other. We've had to learn. I've had to learn how to be the wife that my husband needs, and I'm still learning. It is an ongoing process. I'm still learning things about me. And so as I'm learning more about me and who I am, the call of God on my life, all of those different things, because in a marriage, you wear many hats. You don't just wear the hat of a wife. You wear a hat sometimes of a mother, of a father, of a sister, of, all these other things, of a business owner, all of these, leaders, and so on and so forth. So you wear many hats. And sometimes, and I say this a lot of times, that even though we are, pastors of a church, he's the senior pastor, I'm the co-pastor, all of those different things. Well, still too, there is a certain amount of stressors that my husband has that I don't have, even as the co-pastor. We at the same church doing, I teach sometimes, but he teaches most of the time. God has given him a great vision for the 50 departments, that we have there in the church, that he's responsible for, the people that he's responsible for inside of the church, outside of the church, the people that, God has connected us to cover and to support. So all of those different things, the vision that God has given him, for the church, the vision that God has given him for our home, our ministry, things that God has called us to do. And so there is a certain amount of responsibility that he has that perhaps I don't have. There are times I can go to bed. I go to bed at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to bed. Well, sometimes he doesn't have that option. He has to stay up because he's trying to put things together. So I can't get upset with him when I want him to do something and he's like, I'm tired. I don't feel like it. I can't just say, well, you never want to do anything. You always, no. I have to take into consideration the things and the stressors that he has going on, that when he was up, I was asleep.
And I think it goes the other way around too.
Yeah.
I think that, I think that it goes the other way around as well. I think where, she could be dealing with some stuff. I remember last year, and I don't know how many, some of y'all were with us last year, and my wife was sick and not well. She had to have a surgical procedure, and here we are. I still have to pastor. I still got to go to church. I still got to do all the stuff that I got to do. But I'm also concerned about my wife. So the night she had surgery, I had one of the other people. I said, well, listen, y'all going to minister because I need to be with her. Mm-hmm. And it bothered me. There was a part of me that was torn because I knew I had a responsibility for the kingdom, but I also had a responsibility for my wife. Mm-hmm. So I stayed at home with my wife. And I let somebody else minister and teach. And then that Sunday morning, I had somebody to come over to be with her. And on Sunday morning, somebody would come stay with her while I went and did what I needed to do as far as minister. And so I think there's a balance in making sure that each one of you considers the other one and is concerned about the other person's situation and other situation. I think that's very important. Right. I think you got to be able to look at what the other person, and let me say this: it can't always be your side of the story. It can't always be. It is not always about your side of the story. If every conversation and every argument ends with you trying to get your way, you having the last say, you having the last word, I go back to what I said in the beginning. Somebody is not dead. Yes. And so in your marriage, you got to be and if your spouse don't die, then you die. Mm-hmm. Because guess what? They can't argue by themselves. Mm-hmm. I love that about my wife. Mm-hmm. When we first got married, I wasn't all the way dead. And so I'm just arguing, just a fussing. And she's sitting there looking at me. And see, for me, sometimes that would make me even madder. I'm sitting here like I'm fussing, and you don't want to talk back to me? No, it's getting ready to get worse. I'm finna fuss even louder. And she kind of just sat there and said, you know what? Okay, you want to fuss. I guess you just fuss by yourself, because I'm not going to fuss with you. Mm-hmm. And eventually I learned, okay, she's not going to fuss with me. Then I had to learn how to, because you know what, my wife was a pediatric nurse. And one of the things that I watched her tell babies, use your words. Use your words. Mm-hmm. And she said, use your words. So you have to sometimes in relationships, even though you're older, you have to you and your spouse have to learn. Now let me go to another side of that in just a moment. You have to also learn how to teach your spouse how to communicate with you. Because the other thing I had to teach my wife is that it was emotional and relational abuse for her not to communicate with me when I need her to communicate with me.
Right.
Because my love language is communication.
Right.
And so if my love language is communication, and yours, and then your personality says because you're an introvert you shut down, or in her situation too, she had been through a lot of abuse. And so because she had been through a lot of abuse, she would automatically put up a wall and say, okay, I can't deal with you when you get frustrated. Okay, so then I had to learn how not to make her put up her wall, but she had to learn how to also take her wall down and communicate with me, because the reality is, you know, somebody said something about, maybe, I don't know if they, okay.
Emotional abuse, okay, I see.
Yeah, so you have to be able to take the wall down and communicate.
Right, because
when you withhold your language.
Right, because it can be a form of control, and I didn't even realize that when there were times when communication was necessary and I refused to do it.
Right.
You know, I refused to do it. I'm like, I'm not saying anything. I'm good. I'm not talking. I'm not saying anything. And so I would be silent. And so sometimes silence is not a way to de-escalate. Sometimes silence will cause more of a frustration
and resentment. Yeah, absolutely.
When you shut down, that means you've controlled. You've used that. It is a control mechanism. It's a form of manipulation. You know, as even as I begin to look at it, I'm like, I just manipulated that situation. You know, with my silence, with my withholding information, with my lack of communication, you know. So when you don't communicate, when you shut down and you don't communicate, you give the other person the ability to assume.
Wow. I think that's good. And so I think that it's so important for us, again, to communicate. And then, again, as I said earlier, not just your communication, but we manipulate our spouses in lots of ways. So you can manipulate them from withholding intimacy. You can withhold your communication. Let me say this. What if your spouse's communication, what if your spouse's love language is acts of service? And so, like for me, two primary things. One, communicate with me. Two, it excites me when you help me with what my God assignment is. So if you stand with me to help me with my God assignment, it does something in me, because that's your assignment, is to help me for me.
Absolutely.
And so if you're not helping me meet my assignment, I'm not saying you got to do everything, but you need, your assignment is to help me with and it does something for me when you're helping me with my assignment.
Right. Absolutely. Because in the end, it's going to bless both of us.
Absolutely.
If we're always going in a different direction because I got my own thing and he has his own thing, sooner or later, it's going to pull us further apart. And as we continue to go in our own way, then the marriage is eventually it's going to dissolve. Because there is no togetherness. There is nothing that you really have in common, because everybody is just concerned about what they want and their thing and their vision. But in a marriage, it is and one of the things I appreciate about my husband is that he pushes me. He's like, Valora, there's more to you. You've got to tap into that. There are books inside of you. He has pushed me to write books. He has pushed me to do various things on my own. We do a lot of things together, and we love working together. We love being together, whether it's business, ministry, fun, all of those different things. But then there are certain things that he has pushed me to do by myself. And so I've had to understand that. You know, we were just talking the other day. He said, you know what? You've been on a certain level in this one area. It's time to go to the next level. So you know what I did? Because, let me tell you, there was a time where I could easily get defensive. And I have. You know, I've easily gotten defensive. But I realized that he does have my best interest at heart. And so what I asked him was, show me, what do you think that looks like? I want to know. I believe you. I know there is another level in to go to in this certain area. So what do you feel that looks like? And so he's like, yeah, we'll work on it. We'll work on it. So then I have to be, I have to be understanding enough to receive the constructive criticism that he's going to give me to push me to that next
without
place.
getting defensive.
Right.
That's
right.
important.
And
let me say that I don't think you did it initially because you just were defensive. I think you had gone through so much abuse and so much of people telling you what you weren't that when I gave you constructive criticism, you felt that I was what you got a flashback to was the other person who was that you were married to that all of a sudden that was abusive. And because they were abusive, when you heard my voice, you didn't just hear my voice, you heard the voice of your mother, you heard the voice of your ex-husband, you heard the voice of these other people. So now when I'm trying to tell you something, baby, I think you can do better, we had to get past that point where you could actually get to the point where you could receive what I was saying and not be defensive.
Right.
That was important.
Sure, absolutely. And being able to see that, being able to accept those different things. And then there are times when I've, just like, I'm not being defensive. I just want to, show you my side or my point of view, in the situation. So I'm not being defensive. I just want to show you my side or how I feel about it. And sometimes that, and so it's just a way that we have to be able to work together, be able to, accept the constructive criticism from the spouse. And sometimes we could be good in giving the advice, but we don't want to receive the advice, that we really need.
That's tough too when you're married and, you can't really even help each other because you're not even used to help. And so that's the stuff too that you need to know about your spouse.
Yes.
You need to be able to talk to somebody because most times when people get married, they don't have the background, they don't have the experience to be able to look at somebody and tell what their past issues were and how those past issues. I can sit down and ask somebody a series of questions, and in asking them the series of questions, I can get an understanding of what problems they're going to have based on what they've had in the past. Okay. How was your relationship with your father? How was your relationship with your mother? How was your relationship with your last pastor? Do y'all go to church together? How's your relationship with your children? How do you feel about yourself? What's your educational level? What do you have you studied? And so you got all of these type things, from the educational level being a problem where you have an insecurity because you think your spouse is smarter than you, to an air of superiority because you think you're smarter than your spouse. So you got all of those kind of things and factors that come into relationships that people don't look at and don't realize until they've been married. Yes. I was talking to this one couple, and brother was like, man, listen, my wife has X amount of degrees. I don't have those kind of degrees. So then when they got into an argument, she talked down on him like he was less than her because her degrees outranked his degrees. But it still meant that the Bible still said he was the head. Whether you made more money, whether you had greater degrees, he was still the head, and you still got to submit. Yes. You may be the boss at work, but you got to submit at home. Come on. And so that stuff is intense. And I think there should still be some, he's got to have respect for who you are and can't treat you like anything, less than the woman of God that you are. But I think that there is still a respect and honor from a God position that the husband has to be able to have. No man wants to be emasculated in his own home.
Jesus.
Yeah. No man wants to feel like he's less than a man. I remember when we first got married. Some of y'all heard this joke before. And so here we are, we got married. And
because I had been unmarried for 7 years. I was, comfortable in my unmarriedness, and, I was good. I enjoyed being by myself, so on and so forth. I grew up very dependent. I was very dependent on my parents, only child. So, they provided for me, took care of everything. So then when I became a professional, I became very independent. So I took pride in taking care of myself, working. I enjoyed working and doing what I did. So when he met me, I was a professional. I was used to working, even though I was in that place of transition where God was releasing me from my job, from my career. So that's the background of where I was when we met.
Yeah, so here we are, and she's used to being the boss because she's used to being by herself. And so she said something one day, and I'm like, hold on, bring that down a little bit. You had a little bit too much bass in your voice. Put some more, get some of the testosterone out, put some estrogen in, and let's bring that down a little bit. And then on top of bringing that down, I'm helping you to understand I am not gonna wear the skirt in this house. I'm gonna wear the pants. Yes. And so I had to put my foot down. Sometimes, brothers, you gotta put your foot down. Put your foot down.
Okay, I hear you.
And right. And so, but I'm not saying that from a dogmatic standpoint. Don't get me wrong. Don't nobody take that as a being dogmatic. That's not what I am. I am saying that sometimes I had to let her know. Now you're not gonna demasculate me. You're not gonna make me feel like I'm gonna be the woman and you're gonna be the man. We're not having that up in here because I think there's an order and I think there's balance to stuff. And I ain't wearing the skirt. I'm just not wearing it. I don't know. Some of the brothers in Ireland and other places, they wear the kilts. I'm not even wearing the kilt. I'm not doing it, okay? I'm wearing pants in this house.
Somebody say their husband says that too.
Yeah, I'm not doing it. So that's just my little piece of thought about it. What if you married the wrong person? I asked that earlier. And what if I've lost patience or fallen out of love with my spouse? I think if you married the wrong person, you gotta somewhere in there sit down and be honest. You gotta sit down somewhere, and then I'm gonna let you answer that question. You gotta be honest with your spouse about where you are, and I think that's the kind of conversation you gotta have. Here's the deal. I feel like we got married for all the wrong reasons, and I feel like we both know that if something doesn't change, we're going to be in trouble.
Right.
So we have a couple of options. How do we work through this thing? Because I love you, I just don't know that I'm always in love with you. I know you love me, but I don't know that you're always in love with me. So how do we work through this thing and get to the place where if we're both believing God, that we can work through this impasse and get to the other side?
Right.
And so you got to be able to sit there and be honest with your spouse and share your heart with your spouse, because the reality is the indignation and the resentment is brewing, and they can feel it. I asked the question, what do you do when your spouse's countenance changes and you know it? Then you got to actually sit down and have these hard conversations and say, okay, what do you do and what do I do to get us into the place that we need to get into, that causes us to be the couple we're supposed to be?
Right.
What do we need to do?
Right.
What do you see? I'll be open. I'll be honest. What do you see in me that you feel like needs to change? And most times we're not able to do this. People are not able to sit down and say, going back to the constructive criticism.
Right.
Well, you can be a little harsh sometimes. It would probably help if you would go to church with me. It would probably help if we got in the Word together and if you prayed for me. Because I think if you prayed for me, it would make a difference. And then I'd be like, well, I think if you, because your thing is prayer.
An investment.
You can't expect a withdrawal from something you didn't make a deposit in.
Absolutely.
And so that's in the Word, that's in prayer, that's in any of those things.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes we're going to our spouse's ATM and we're trying to withdraw something that we didn't put in.
Now somebody asked the question. Now I'm gonna give you an answer. Somebody says it only works if both spouses are willing to communicate. But here is the deal. You have to be able to get your spouse's attention and be able to say to them, we have two options. Either we work on this and we put the effort into it to make it work, or we're going to be in divorce court.
Right.
It's your choice.
Right.
And I think that it never gets to that point where we're honest enough with our spouse to be able to say that.
Right. And then if they're not able to communicate, or they feel like they can't communicate, say, okay, if you feel like you can't talk to me, just the two of us, can we get somebody, a third party, a counselor or something, so that can help us walk through this process?
And if they say, and if they're not willing, so you got two options at that point. Either you deal with it or you get out of it. And so this is why, and then the longer you deal with it, the more resentment and the more anger is going to come.
Right.
And then even with saved people, they either have two options. Either they stay in the marriage, upset, in church, loving God, or in some cases, they find an alternative to their happiness. You'll catch that on the way home sometime. Sometime tomorrow in the morning, you'll catch what I'm saying. So you got to be honest with your spouse. You got to tell them, did that divorce was the option they chose. And you got to, and listen, if they chose divorce, you can't beat yourself up for that.
Right.
You got to forgive them, forgive yourself, and get healed from it,
right.
and not beat yourself up.
Yes.
Because it's not your fault. It's not your fault. There was nothing else you could do. If you did that, and they chose divorce, and it's nothing else you can do. And let me say this: I promise you that God, let's say this: at some point, God will bring you the person that you were supposed to have been married to. Now, somebody asked me to share more details about a previous relationship. The challenge with doing that is because of, so if this was a closed environment, there are probably some things that we could say in an elongated manner. But because, one, we have children that watch our social media. Two, we have family members that watch our social media. There are probably a lot of things that we're not going to necessarily share about personal details of a lot of those things, because there are people who still have to live through whatever decisions and mistakes people made. And so whether we made the mistakes, whether another part of the party made a mistake, so I'm not going to necessarily get in there, because one thing I've learned how to do is not, beat people up, dog people out, talk about what people did or didn't do. I think you have to learn how to forgive people, forget things, and keep walking.
Yeah, and one of the things that I can even say in reference to that, I was in a situation where it was where the person was very selfish. I'll just put it out like that. The person was very selfish. They were really more concerned about themselves and what they wanted and how they looked and all of these different things. And so in moving in that, because I really consider myself a very patient person. I'm very patient. I take a lot. I really do. I take a lot. You can run over me with a Mack truck and make a U-turn. But the moment I get fed up, that means I am completely...
They wrote a song about it. I want to hear it go.
I am completely done. I'm done. That means when I am done, that means you've exhausted everything out of me. I have nothing left to give to you. And so in that situation, God began to show me that I was going to be leaving the relationship. He showed me, I was going to be moving. I was going to be attending a different church. I didn't understand all of it at that time. Why? Because I was a committed person. I'm loyal to whatever situation I'm in. That's just who I am, the type person that I am. So I was committed to it. I remember walking in the house one day. I said, oh my God, I'm leaving. And God...
Now I'm going to say something about that in a minute, because I see a lot of people chiming in, and I see a lot of sisters chiming in. Well, that's me too. But sometimes God can also stretch your patience.
Yes, and it was because it was a 10-year situation. It wasn't like a couple of years. It wasn't like, this happened or whatever and I'm done. No, it was a 10-year situation that I was committed to, no matter what, in spite of, regardless of what this person did or whatever they didn't do, so on and so forth. And so I just began to continue to do what God had called me to do. I never stopped serving in church. They were part of the church as well. So I continued to do what I knew that God had called me to do. But there came a point in time that God said, enough is enough.
Yeah.
And so he made a way of escape for me. And one of the scriptures that God gave to me during that time was Galatians 5:1. He says, stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith I have set you free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. And so I had to walk through that process. I had to, in order to really be healed and restored, I had to completely forgive. Let go of what happened or whatever didn't happen. Move on with my life. I didn't hold anything. I made a decision one day. I looked myself in the mirror. I said, today is the day that I choose to let it go. I'm not going to worry over it anymore. I'm going to cry over it anymore. I'm not going to be angry over it anymore. I'm through with it. This is a day of new beginnings for me. And so I made that decision. It did not mean that things didn't come to my mind, but as soon as they did, I cast it down because I was determined. I made that reference, went back to that day, that specific day and time that I made that declaration, and I did not allow that thing to come back and overtake my mind.
Wow. Now let me say this. When you got on that subject, you wasn't watching the screen because everybody and their cousin and their uncle and aunties too said the same thing. This is me. So there's a lot of people, a lot of people are dealing with some of these situations. People said 15 years, 16 years, and they've been in some of those situations. So, the Bible does give you, and in that situation there was some infidelity.
Right.
And so there were grounds to be able to make the transition, make the shift, and do what needed to be done. And so, that goes back to what I said in the beginning. The Bible does give you clear grounds if there's infidelity, if there's abuse. There's even future grounds for being separate. See, that's when some people say, man, 28 years, wow. So some people have really gone through some really challenging things. 11 years and you weren't married. 11 years and what? 11 years y'all were dating and not married?
Wow.
Is that what you were trying to say, Nelly Chanel?
And so it's just like these years that you have given.
No, let me say this. That's why you should have had some spiritual counseling, because I would tell anybody that I know, you only had to be in my church to be a spiritual daughter or a person that's under my influence. It does not take a man 10 years to know whether or not he wants to marry you. It does not take him 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. If you're in a relationship for 5 years and that brother does not want to marry you, I mean, you need to, you're really, there's some soul ties there that's keeping you from getting free. And somebody said, well, I don't see anything wrong with that. Yeah, you might not, somebody said they was just shacking up. No, you don't see anything wrong with 5 years, 10 years. Yeah, I see something wrong with that. Now, you may not see it. Well, and now, let me say this, and Lord, I had to be careful how I say stuff, but there's something wrong with that. I'm just telling you. If you've been together 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 2 years, 3 years, and he hasn't made a decision to say that he wants to marry you, because you don't have the rest of your life to figure out whether or not you want to be married.
And then give a person some of the best years of your life. Yeah. And if
you wasn't saved, that was different. Yeah.
Right. If you're not saved,
she said they wasn't saved. That's different.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, like for me, I'm not gonna wait. And then I don't think there's a financial issue. I don't think that there is. And somebody said, well, what about God's timing? I don't think it takes you that long to figure out if God ain't spoke after 2 or 3 years, that might not be the one. I'm just saying, I just don't think that, I think somebody has some unresolved issues. I think somebody has some trust issues that don't allow you to trust the person. I think, because again, even when it comes to, if you're setting goals, now maybe I just talked to a friend of mine and they said that their children were together in high school. They met in high school. They both decided to go to college. And once they graduated college, see, that's different.
Right.
That's different. They said, we're going to get through with college. And then after college, we're going to get married. And they both lived safe through college. They graduated college because they wanted to focus on college first. And then they got married. And so I could understand that. But again, I just in my mind, and maybe it's because I'm in a prophetic environment and God speaks to us, I just don't see it being, I couldn't have seen, we got married, and so some of y'all that don't know our testimony, we got married, we met, and 2 months later we were married. And, so she says, I know a lady that dated a man for 7 years, and he wouldn't even discuss marriage. He met another lady and married her after 6 months.
Yes.
So
yes.
that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
You
yes.
That man knows whether or not he wants to marry you.
Mm-hmm.
You just you can't tell me that.
Right.
I
Absolutely.
won't believe that. You can be mad at me. You can not like me. You can block me. You can not be my friend. You can do whatever you want to do. I'm telling you, I don't believe it takes a man 3, 4, 5 years to know whether or not he wants to marry you.
Right.
Now, if he's saying, I need a year or two to prepare to marry you, I need to get my finances together, and he's really adamant about that because he wants to be in a certain place, then that's no problem.
Yes.
He's still living with his mama. Let him get his money together. Let him get his home, get his stuff together. No problem.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, when he hadn't even discussed it, and it's been 5 years.
And he keeps avoiding it. It year after year. Well, we'll look at it in another year or so, maybe next year, and then something happens, and then he meets somebody else, and then we've seen that happen.
Yeah.
That is so real, and you've given a person some of the best years of your life, and they turn around and marry somebody else just like
right.
that.
Because this other person, and so here's this other woman, and she's sitting there. You really, if you ain't married, you say you engaged, but you ain't married, man, please. That's why I say, even with that, you need to have some godly counsel. You're dating, get some godly counsel. No, let's go fast. Let's go pray. Let's go see what God is saying. If God says yes, then let's develop a strategy. If God says, you're not my husband, you my family or my friend or my cousin or whatever, my spiritual, whatever you want to be, you can be that. But that doesn't mean we're going to be spouse. You know what I'm saying? Right. So I'm saying, if you're dating, I don't believe that we should date in Christianity for a long time, because some of this dating, man, leads to fornication. Next thing you know, you at home, whether you fornicating by yourself or you fornicating with them, you're still committing adultery with God, against God, because you're fornicating with somebody else.
Right.
And so I just think that some of this stuff leads to other stuff. And so you really got to have a plan. And then if you say, okay, it's going to be 2 years, then you need to have a lot of fasting, a lot of prayer, and a lot of accountability. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't be always out at dinner together, at romantic dinners with the lights down low, cutting out the lights. You shouldn't be at his house, he at your house, y'all always somewhere together. That's not wise, because you're going to end up being in trouble.
Right.
And then you next thing you know, you done slipped and fell on each other. And there you go, And so now you're talking about, well, we got to get married because I slipped and fell. Now I'm pregnant because I slipped and fell. Well, and then some people say, well, what about if we can maintain our celibacy? Oh, if you can maintain it, no problem. No problem. Mm-hmm. But I've just not seen a lot of people.
Somebody say cut the ties and run. No thanks. Yep, been there. When you've been there, you understand. Yeah, when you've been there and you like because how many times can you really? How many times can you really continue to do that?
Yeah, you can't do it.
How many 10-year stints do you have?
Right.
To do that?
You don't have it. You don't have a whole lot of 10 and 20-year times to say, you know what? We've been engaged for 20 years. But you're going to get you're going to get the engaged award. You're going to get an award for being engaged.
It's the longest.
Like you said, she said she wasn't saved, so that's different.
Right.
You probably had no spiritual counsel. But I'm saying, but you're gonna get the award for being engaged the longest. You're gonna get the award for not figuring out whether you want to be married the longest. And let me tell you something. Again, if you got a plan, I'm not saying you meet, you pray, you say we set a date. The date is 1.5 years, 2 years away. While we're waiting to get married, this is what we're going to do.
Right.
I'm going to finish my degree. I'm going to get my finances together.
Yes.
I want you to get your finances together. I want you to be healed, because there's some stuff you still need to be healed from. Some stuff I need to be healed from. That's totally different.
Yes.
That's totally different than saying we're dating and we don't have a plan to get married, and we just kind of, floating through life. you could be floating through life with that person. That's why that person met the other person and got married to him in 6 months, because they realized that person wasn't the person they wanted to be married to.
Right. Because they see, the thing about it, they saw purpose in the other person.
I don't know if it was always purpose, because I wasn't there. But I know they saw
right.
something.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree, they saw something.
Yeah.
So I'd be scared.
I don't want to be. I don't want to be tolerated. I don't want to just be strung along. I don't want to be just because.
Yeah.
You know, I want you want somebody to be intentional about you. You want somebody to say, man, I want you in my life. I don't want to, and that's one of the things my husband, you know, he said when we first met, he was like, I don't know, you know, he said one thing he did know, he knew he didn't want to live his life without me. And so we had to really seek God to say, okay, is this my brother? Is this my sister? Or is this my spouse? You know, because I tell you, there was a connection. And then even then we weren't saying, oh, okay, we supposed to be together. No, we as we begin to talk, the first week or so, we knew that there was a connection, and we felt God was doing something. God had kept telling me, it's gonna be quick. You finna get married, it's gonna be quick. Then when I didn't want to accept it from God, then he started sending people to me and saying, you finna get married, it's gonna be so quick, you're not gonna even believe it. It's gonna blow your mind. And I'm like, oh my God. And so if it had been anything else other than what God said, it wasn't God.
Yeah. And somebody said, you never give spouse privileges to somebody who's not willing to. Like, you shouldn't give wife, I believe you shouldn't give wife privileges to somebody who is not willing to be a wife. And likewise, you shouldn't give husband privileges. Like, y'all dating, you should be in there cooking meals, fixing plates. Fixing the plate is one thing, but you in here cooking meals. He coming to your house for 3 meals a day. He paying all your bills, and stuff like this. That's y'all really almost already playing house. You come to the house, he need a meal prep plan, you fixing all the meals, you sitting over there, every time he get hungry, you done hopped up and fixed the meal. Y'all ain't even married yet.
Yeah.
He ain't even proposed. You just want to make sure he okay.
Right.
And then he want him to pay all the bills, you want to do all this. Man, please, we need to get that together. Because eventually somebody's feelings going to be hurt.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Or somebody's going to expect something that they didn't necessarily, you're not willing to give, or that you shouldn't give before you're married. So those are important things. Those are very important things. Listen, we're going to get out of here. You have anything else?
Yes, someone had asked about how did I become independent, because I had said earlier, growing up, I was very dependent, because it was just a part of the, my environment as an only child. My parents, I had a mother and a stepfather, so they were able to take care of, whatever I had or needs that I had. And so as I pursued, school, college, then I focused on nursing, something I wanted to do. So I went into nursing, and I really enjoyed what I did. So I became very, very independent. I didn't want to depend on my parents. I had seen situations where, and I was always focused on that, to have a career that I would be able to take care of myself. Of course, you have the story that you would love to get married and, get married, have kids, live happily ever after. Sometimes life hits and there is not a happily ever after. So I would always say that I wanted to have a career that I could, if something happened, I could always take care of myself. Of course, if I had a husband, we worked together, so on and so forth. But if that does not happen the way that I had anticipated, that I wanted something that I would be able to, of course, be able to provide for myself and so on, and live a comfortable life. And so with that, I became very focused, became a nurse, worked, enjoyed that, whether it was day or night. And so I became very independent. I didn't depend on anyone else to take care of me. I didn't depend on my parents to do whatever. So that's how I became independent. And amazingly enough, I'm so grateful that I did, because he was not always the one that provided. Because again, he was selfish in many aspects. So I had to understand, okay, how to keep the lights on, how to do certain things that I felt that it was his responsibility to make sure that was done. And it wasn't always that way. So I had to learn how to do that. Being married and still having to do it. So that's how that was.
And and now let me say on this side, it doesn't take you all day to know that somebody wants to marry you. And likewise, if you get married to the wrong person, it could be dangerous as well. Sure. So, you see situations where people, I'm gonna answer your question about can you be friends? Because I think you can be friends. But I think, and yes, intimacy does mean you got to communicate. But my challenge also is that you know where the boundaries are, and you got to have accountability. Right. So if you're in the relationship and trying to develop this thing, getting to know each other as friends, well, you know where the boundaries are. You know when you're crossing the boundaries. Yes. You know when you get to a place where you want to cross the boundaries. Right. You know when you get to a place where both of you want to cross the boundaries. Absolutely. And so, so when you both get to that place where you know you want to cross the boundaries, then that's when you got to make a serious decision to say either we want to do this or we don't. Now, somebody on here, oh God, you know me, I'm going to get in trouble, and I always do. Somebody made the statement, and I don't know what they were saying when they said it, but somebody made the statement that we're not necessarily perfect. We've never said that we were perfect, but I do think that as we have a responsibility to talk to people about helping people not make some of the mistakes that we've either made or we've seen other people make. And so that's very important. Because, again, when we started our Suddenly series and we were doing Midnight Cries, we had a lot of people with relationship issues where we said, how can we best deal with people with relationship issues? The best way to do that is educate people. Because, again, you can't go to a bank and make a withdrawal from a bank you've never made a deposit in. Yes. That's illegal. Yes. And so it happens the same way in people's lives. In the people's lives of the church we lead, I can't go in and make a deposit from them in something, a withdrawal from something I never made a deposit on. Yes. I was talking to one of the pastors that I list to as an advisor, and he said to me, I was, kind of frustrated about a certain issue in the church, and he said, have you ever taught on it? Have you taught them what the Bible says about it? And I was like, no, I never did. He said, well, how can you expect them to live by something that you've never, ever deposited it in them? And so if you've never been taught it, you can't be expected to know it. It's like you go to take a test. If you go to take a test for a certain class and the professor didn't give you the information, you can go back and say, well, you never taught us that. And the professor's like, well, you know what, you're right. Let's move that question from the test. So it's the same way in your relationship. Yeah. You can't be expected to live out something that nobody's ever taught you. And so that's why as many people as we can, before we have them before we're praying about different things in their marriage, we also want to help them understand some things. And if we can prevent somebody from going through something, then that's what we're here to do. To love people. We have our mission statement is that we empower, equip, and encourage. Right. So everything we do is about empowering people, equipping people, and encouraging people. Yes. And so if we can empower you in marriage, if we can empower you in prayer, if we empower your faith, that's what the whole Suddenly movement has been about, to empower your faith. If you are anywhere near Port Arthur, Texas, next month, we will be in Port Arthur, Texas. If you're anywhere near Tampa, Florida, or if you would meet us in Tampa in August, and you can go to our website, www.LaJunandValora.com. If you're still interested in our Discipleship Institute classes, you can go to our website, discipleshipinstitute.org. We didn't bring any of the products tonight, but if you want to learn more about prayer, if you want to be able to anoint yourself with prayer oils, if you want to be able to have books that really teach you how to break through, then go to our website, www.LaJunandValora.com, and check us out. And if you're anywhere in the Tampa Bay area tomorrow night, Wednesday night, we will be at Perfected Love. And you can go to our website, www.perfectedlove.org. That's our church. And really excited. if I wouldn't name some of the other cities that we have, churches that are connected with us, but we won't. But let me tell you something. I believe God is doing something amazing. I believe this is an exciting time. And we just came back from Dallas with ASAF, with Apostle Eckhart. It was an amazing time, and really, really loved it. So we really, really appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for being on. Again, go to our website, www. People always ask us, okay, one thing you don't see us doing, we would not put PayPal information in our timeline. If anybody does that, I'm not against that, against you doing it. But I've never put any of that in there. People say, well, how do we sow into you? You can go to our website if we've been a blessing to you, www.LaJunandValora.com.
And there's a
somebody said it was a pleasure to meet you
at
ASAP.
Bless you. Bless you.
I don't know who it was. But at any rate, yep. So thank you so much. Excited to be with you guys.
Daughter
Excited.
of Zion.
Yeah. Do you remember who she was?
I think so.
Yeah.
You're beautiful.
That's my wife. See, that's my wife. She just compliments everybody. She's just so sweet. She just loves everybody.
Yeah, I just love to build people up, strengthen, that's why we're here, to build, to strengthen, to encourage, to let you know that you're not alone, you're not by yourself, and it doesn't have to end badly, to really understand how to use these tools to implement in your life and to implement in your marriage so that you can be all that God has called you to be. We all go through situations. We all go through, things in life that sometimes, will shake us. But we don't have to settle for anything either. That's the whole thing. We don't have to settle for somebody putting us off for 8 years. I know there can be a situation wherein you've been friends. Just say like you've been friends. You've known each other for 6, 7, 8 years. You've been friends, and then all of a sudden, and I've seen that too, where things change, and it's like the friend goes to the next level.
Can you go to the car dealership and rent a car for 8 years? You probably can.
Rent to own. No.
Okay.
And never own.
If you go to the dealership and it's a brand new car, I want you to purchase me. Could I just go in and just borrow you for 8 years?
God.
I mean, I'm just saying, this is my analogy. Absolutely not.
That's a good analogy.
You're going to have to go in and make a decision. You can't even test drive the car. Come on now.
Yeah, some cars.
You can. I mean, even if you got in the car, drove it down the street, and came back, you still most of the time have somebody in the car with you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They're not letting you get away with that car by yourself. Yeah. And so then you have to make a decision. Do you have the credit to buy this car? Do you have the money in cash to buy this car?
Come on.
If you don't have the money or the cash or the credit, guess what? I'm going to sell it to somebody else.
Jesus.
You go look at a house. You consider the house. You go in the store.
Because usually you're looking for a house, they want you to be pre-approved.
Right.
Do you have your pre-approved?
Can you go in Macy's and say, listen, I'm going to borrow this outfit. They go in Dillard's. I'm going to borrow this. I go in the grocery store. Listen, I'm just going to borrow this food. I'll bring it back when I'm done. I'm just going to borrow it. You can't do that. So I wouldn't let nobody borrow me in a relationship. I'm not going to let you borrow me. Even as a man, I'm not going to let you mess with my emotions. Mess with my heart. Get my whole mind, emotion, everything else wrapped up in this thing. And then all of a sudden, you like, well, this ain't what I want to do. I'm like, you play with my emotions? And that's why people get mad and be angry with each other. Yeah. Because you don't tell me you can play with me. I done put myself off the market. I done put sold on the house. I done put, it's off the market. Can't nobody else come look at this house. Right. Yeah. Yes. And you're not going to buy it. Right. You play on my emotions. Yep. No, absolutely not. That's my silly little, no borrowing. That's right, Jonda. Girl, we can't wait to see you at Suddenly in Tampa. We got to call you soon because we got to talk. We got to get it together. Jonda's one of our family members from Perth, Australia. And, yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's why people kill people. No, that's how they kill them. Oh, God. But that's true. I didn't want to say it. But that's true. People, because you messing with people's emotions. Right. So you mentioned you're going to mess with my emotions for 8 years.
That's how your windows get broke.
Don't break the people's window.
I've never done that.
Don't break the people's window.
It's not even worth it to me. I mean, no, that's not even.
Somebody was telling me the other day.
Just walk away.
Yeah, just walk away.
Walk away.
Just walk away. Walk away.
Walk away.
Well, listen, we're getting out of here. Again, go to our website, www.LaJun and We'd love for you to hang out with us. We've got meetings coming up in different cities. And we would love for you to connect with us either in Port Arthur, in Tampa. We're planning a couple of meetings in a couple other cities, so we'd love for you to be with us. We're coming back to Perth. We're coming back to the Philippines, coming back to Trinidad this year. We're supposed to go back to South Africa. We're going to Israel. And so we're going to be in a lot of different places. It's going to be amazing. We do plan to also come back to Indianapolis and somewhere else we were supposed to go. And I'm really trying to get to L.A. and to Oakland. But it seems like every time we try to go there, there's a fight. So we're going to get it together. Yep. And help that person get, whoever that person is, all that foul language on my Periscope. Don't come on my Periscope cursing.
They're going to get saved today.
They're going to get saved or blocked.
Yes.
One of the two. All right. Listen, we love you guys. We will talk to you very soon. Somebody says come to Detroit. Yep. Some people are Canela Chanel's coming in August.
Yes.
Amen. Yes, that's right. You're coming to Florida. We're excited.
Yes.
And listen, we're going to have a big, we're going to have our Caribbean Beach Barbecue Family Reunion that Saturday. And so something to let us all come together, laugh, joke, have fun together.
Yes.
And I'm going to make another big announcement in the next couple of weeks about our local church. And we'd love for some of you even to be there for the meeting that we're going to have that Sunday. So it's going to be amazing. We're excited. We're coming to Indianapolis soon. We just got to get the dates locked in. We were going to come next month, but it wasn't enough time for us to advertise and really get people to know that we were coming. And so we decided that we would push it off a little bit because we don't want to rush anything, you know? Yep. But again, that's only another couple of weeks. We ain't talking about 6 years. Amen. Praise the Lord. We love you too.
That's almost like, okay, no, man, I ain't going to get into that. It's
No, man.
No. It's just like, you know.
It makes no sense.
It's just like people been saying for 15,000 years, Jesus is coming soon.
Uh-oh, don't talk about that.
That's
one.
why
we would love to come to Columbia. We have friends in Columbia too. Let me say this last one. Oh, let me lean in for this one. You know, I was gonna say, and I forgot what I was gonna say. Keep talking, I'm gonna get it again.
Oh, this is a good one. I was gonna say. What was you gonna say?
Oh no, I forget. See, this is what I was gonna say. Here we go. Last night I had one of my really good friends to die. This week, another person that I really cared a lot about died. A friend of mine that every time I went to meetings at my pastor's church, he always treated me really kind. Brother Paul was an amazing man. And he even got my brother's number before my brother died to call my brother and encourage him. Really loved the scriptures, loved God. And he passed away on I think Friday night. Then yesterday, one of my good friends, the owner of or the founder of Destiny Image book publishing, he died. This was a good friend of mine. I mean, we knew each other's life. We knew different things about each other. We had really great conversations. And what God began to show me as I was thinking about that and pondering on that today was that the older we get, the wiser we get, and the smarter we get about our relationships. So what I learned is that there are some things that you don't want to wait until somebody is dead to tell them. You don't want to be standing at the funeral saying, I loved you, or standing at the funeral saying, man, I wasted half of your life. Or I shouldn't have done this, or I shouldn't have done that. So you got to learn how to make. You know, I had told him. I said I called. It was like a week and a half ago. I called him and I said, man, I got to call you back. Because he called me and I said, I got to call you back. And for whatever reason, I just kept getting busy and never was able to call him. And it bothered me today. So I'm saying that to say, the older we get, the smarter we get, as it pertains to not doing stuff that we waste our time or waste each other's time. You can't let people waste your time because tomorrow isn't promised. Right. I don't preach a doom and gloom. I don't have a defeated eschatological position. But what I do believe is that any of us could die tomorrow. Yeah. The lady that was on the flight on Southwest today had a plan to go from where she was going to land where she was supposed to land, get off, and go about her business.
Right.
We were on a flight coming back from Perth, Australia, and when we were on the flight, about halfway from Hawaii to L.A., there was a man that died, and we had to land in Phoenix to let him off of the flight before we got to Dallas. And so he never had a plan not to make it to his destination. My friend that passed away yesterday went into the hospital. I'm guessing he wasn't feeling good. When he went into the hospital, he had to have emergency surgery. When he had emergency surgery, he came out of the surgery stable. Later on that night, something happened, and he died. I don't think he ever intended not. Now, what if he died and he had a bad conversation with somebody? How does that person now feel?
Right.
So sometimes we can have all these jokes about, life and all this kind of stuff, but you don't ever want to waste anybody's time. And that's why we say you don't want people just to waste your time.
Even stay mad at your spouse.
Or stay mad at your spouse.
Right.
Because you just never know.
Just never
know.
know. Just never know. And some things you can't get back.
That's it.
Some things, when that person is gone, there are some things you just can't get back.
You can't get it back. It's not coming back. So you want to make sure that whatever's necessary to be done to do what's right, you do what's right. Some people say come to Oregon. Wow. I've never been to Oregon before. Oklahoma. Okay. I've been to Oklahoma. I've been to Tulsa. Yeah, I've been to Tulsa. Okay. My friends in Tulsa. Wow. But so you get to choose what situations you think are worth you just wasting people's time with. Right. That's why I say you don't have 10 years. Because you could have been, in that 10 years, you could have been with the person that you were destined to have been with and been enjoying your life. Because tomorrow's not promised.
Right.
And so, you don't waste people's time, and you want to try to make things work, and love people. Well, listen, we're getting out of here. We'd love to come to Oregon and to Oklahoma. Yep. So we'll talk to you soon. Amen. We're getting out of here. We love you guys.
Bye-bye.